Hello, I'm Locke Meredith. I'd like to invite you to join me on the next Legal Lines, where my guest is Franklin Foyle. He's currently a state representative for District 70 and is running for the open Senate seat of Dan Claytor, District 16. He's going to talk to us about his success as a state representative. He's passed 73 laws. He hopes to do the same thing, and they range from supporting folks with autism children to K through 12 savings accounts that are tax deferred. Join us on the next Legal Lines with Franklin Foyle. Legal Lines has interviewed Louisiana Supreme Court justices, appellate trial court judges, federal, state, and local government leaders, including U.S. senators and Congress members. Watch at Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan and Associates website, LockeMeredith.com, or Cox Channel 1004.
At Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan and Associates, it's an honor and a privilege if you choose us to serve you.
We serve you with respect, dedication, and an unwavering commitment.
We serve you by working hard and striving to get you the best possible results.
We serve you using 60+ years of legal knowledge, experience, and relationships.
At Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan and Associates, we believe that life is about relationships, and it's the mission and ministry of all of us to serve you. Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan and Associates has served our community by airing Legal Lines, a community educational program for 18 years weekly to Baton Rouge and the surrounding areas. Watch Legal Lines at LockeMeredith.com or Cox Channel 1004. Hello, welcome to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith. I'm very pleased to have on the show for the very first time Franklin Foyle. He is a current state representative for District 70, and he's running for Senator Dan Claytor's district, because Mr. Claytor is termed out, which is District 16. Franklin, pleasure meeting you.
Locke, thank you for having me today.
And I say meet me, but meet me here. How about that?
Glad to be here with you.
I've
watched your show for many years, so I'm
well,
glad to actually be on the set.
Thank you very much. Tell folks, a little bit about yourself. Most
Sure.
folks don't kind of have an idea of what their legislative representatives really do and who they are.
Absolutely.
So tell folks who you are. Give a little history about you.
Well, I was born and raised in Baton Rouge, and I grew up here.
You gonna die here too, like all of
I
us?
plan to. My kids are here. I love Baton Rouge. My dad was in public office. He was a judge, so I used to go with him when he politicked as a kid. So I've always had an interest in public service. I worked in the legislature in college, and then graduated from LSU in political science. So I really had an interest in public service at an early age.
From the very beginning.
I really did. So I decided I wanted to go to law school and went to Loyola Law School. And while I was in law school, I really enjoyed it. I was down in New Orleans, great program. I always had wanted to be in the armed services. And so I interviewed.
Now what inspired that?
Well, my father had been in the Marine Corps, and both of my grandfathers.
That explains it all.
Yeah, both of my grandfathers had been in World War I and in World War II. So it was in my blood.
Oh, what great family history.
Yeah, it was in my blood, and I just felt like it was something that I had an obligation to do. And so I interviewed with all the services, and I was very fortunate to get an offer from the Navy to join the JAG Corps upon my graduation from law school.
Well, I got to brag on my youngest son. I mentioned to you already, he's in the Navy as a computer scientist, and I'm extraordinarily proud of him. I kind of have a feeling about, how your parents and grandparents probably felt about what you did.
You should be. It was a wonderful experience and still is. So after law school, I went on active duty for 4 years. I got married to my wife, Tanya. We dated in college, and we got married, and her dad was Career Air Force, so she was sort of familiar with the system.
I actually have an uncle who's a 3-star general.
Whoa, wow.
From the Air Force.
That's big time.
Yeah, he ran Hickam Air Force Base in Hawaii for years.
Okay. So we went to Washington, D.C., and I worked at the appellate court up there as an appellate attorney.
All right, start over, because folks have seen the show JAG.
Right.
At least some of us have.
Right.
And that's basically what you are, except you're a judge instead of a prosecutor.
Well, I am now. Now I've been in the Navy 28 years. But when you start off as a young officer in the Navy, you're either a prosecutor or a defense attorney. Or in my case, I got selected to go to the appellate shop in Washington.
Interesting.
And because what happens is if someone's court-martialed, let's say out in California, that same counsel that represented them is not going to go to D.C. because it just logistically doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So the case is then handed off to an attorney in D.C. at the appellate court. So I represented people who were appealing their court-martials in my first assignment. And it was fascinating because that's a court, and I'll get to it later, where I'm working today, yet again. And so we
In D.C. as an appellate court judge.
That's right. That's
This time.
right. That's where I am now. And it's funny because I was there in 1992, 28 years
gosh.
ago.
But that city's changed a little, huh?
Well, it has, and I was nervous practicing in front of all of these old men who were on the bench at that time, and now I'm one of them, I guess, because I'm one of the judges. But it was just a wonderful experience because we, as a young attorney, I got to take very serious cases. I did appellate work for 2 years, and then Tanya and I were transferred to Pensacola, Florida, and I was made the chief prosecutor on the base. And it was
Wow.
like being the DA of Naval Air Station Pensacola, which is a huge base.
So you played both sides of that fence.
Played both sides of the fence. And the Navy's a little bit different. Well, actually, the system's a lot different in some respects because the DA doesn't have the discretion on the cases. It's the commanding officers. Commanding officers determine whether or not a case goes to court-martial.
Interesting. What do you think of that?
I think it's important because of good order and discipline that you
Okay.
need within the units, and you need flexibility for the units, especially if they're about to deploy. I think that the commander should have a key role in whether or not they go forward to a
I think
prosecution.
I have a better perspective.
They do, and also, let's say you're in a war zone. I mean, they do court-martials over in Iraq and Afghanistan. You need the commanding officer to have the flexibility to determine, is this what we're going to do with this particular case?
Right.
And there are other remedies available. So I was in Pensacola for 2 years and loved the experience. We had our first child, Kathleen, and at that time I thought, do I want to come back to Baton Rouge because I love being in Baton Rouge to raise my kids, or do I want a Navy life? I could have done either one, Locke. But I decided to come back to Baton Rouge, started a practice. Well, didn't start a practice. I got with a private practice here and joined the Navy Reserves. So I had the best of both worlds.
Wow. Yeah, I've got a buddy, we were talking about him earlier, Colonel Jeff Mitchell in the National Guard. He loves it. He's retiring next year.
It gave me the opportunity to stay with the Navy. I joined a reserve unit down in New Orleans, and I started worked with a law firm, just doing a civilian law practice. And it was a lot different than the Navy because the Navy's all criminal matters.
Right.
And so these were civil matters. So I worked with this small firm doing all kinds of auto wrecks.
Anything and everything, huh?
Yep, slip and falls, you name it. And I did that for about 10 years. And then, 2007, when term limits came about, I thought about running for the State House. And
What inspired that? Just the past history of your family?
I'd always wanted to be in public service. And really, I was ready in college if I could have had the opportunity. But in hindsight, I really wasn't ready. I needed that extra law training, military
Life
training.
experience.
The life experience.
Yeah.
So, and I had 2 other children along the way as I was in private law practice. And in 2005, I thought about running for the legislature. So I left the firm I was with, it was a small firm, and started my own practice. But because I felt
Flexible.
Yeah, if I'm going to be in public office, I didn't want to have to ask partners for permission, and that was going to be where my time was going to be spent. So,
And it is truly public service. Every one of you folks that I've talked to, whether it's a big role or small role, it's just incredible how much work y'all put into it for such little financial compensation. It's not why you do it.
You have to enjoy it. And I really was very excited about the opportunity. I probably would not have run but for term limits because the person who had been there for years. But it was an open seat. So I thought, I'm 42. My kids were in grade school at the time, so they weren't in diapers, but, and so it was a little bit easier. And I ran. It's probably one of the most difficult things I did because you have to go ask people for money, which is a challenge. And you've got to spend a lot of time and energy going door to door and running a campaign. And I was very lucky to be successful. And so I started in the State House in 2008. That's when Governor Jindal came in. And
Perfect time to come in, huh?
Well, it was brand new time because you had 62 new state House members because of term limits. So it was an exciting time in 2008.
A lot of new blood. Good gosh. And you think you're in favor of term limits?
I am. I mean, I have mixed feelings about it. There's some good and bad. I think it gives people the opportunity by having term limits. On the flip side, you do lose some institutional knowledge.
Right.
Because I think we as a group, when we first came in, were naive about some things, and it takes some time to learn about the budget process and all that. So there are pros and cons, but I benefited from term limits, and so I'm glad I had that opportunity.
Are they not rolled? staged and staggered?
They are, but you have a situation.
What do y'all have, 103 or 104 members in the House of Representatives?
There are 105 actually members of the House, and so you can, under term limits, you can stay for 3 4-year terms. So you have people who have been there 10 or 11 years, approaching 12 years. But you get a new leader every year. You don't have a Speaker of the House who's going to be there 2 or 3 terms.
All right, makes sense. Well, we'll continue this on the next segment. This is Locke Meredith with Legal Lines. My very special guest, Franklin Foyle. He is running for Senate seat for the state of Louisiana, District 16. We'll be right back.
Hello, my name is Collins Meredith. I'm one of the attorneys here at Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan and Associates. One of the many distinguishing factors of our firm is that we are not just one lawyer that you are hiring. We're a team of attorneys. When you hire one of us, we all pull from each other's experiences, knowledge of the law, so that we get you not only a solution to your problems, but the best solution that we can come up with for your problems. So for that reason and many others, I hope that you hire our firm.
Hi, my name is Mitchell Meredith. I'm one of the associate attorneys here at Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan and Associates. One of the reasons I love this firm is that the moment you walk through the doors, you're so much more than business. You're family, which means we're going to fight for you as if you're family. At the end of the day, I think what distinguishes our firm from others is we're a firm that is truly personal, professional, and proven.
Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith. Again, very pleased to have on the show for the first time. His name is Franklin Foyle. He's currently a state representative for District 70. He's running for Dan Claytor's seat, which is District 16 in the Louisiana Senate. Let's dive back in. You've got a remarkable history of doing a lot of stuff and a lot of roles. The one in the Navy seems like it has really prepared you to kind of tackle different issues in a judicious way, literally, but also to deal with issues.
It has, and I've really enjoyed my naval service, and I tell people, when you run for political office, one of the things, there are 2 things that are very important. Number 1, leadership, and that's what you get from the military, from your experience.
Right.
But in the legislature, what is really important is being able to work well with others. The military teaches you teamwork. You have to work with your unit. You don't have a choice. And so I felt like those skills helped me in becoming a very good legislator. And today, I'm still in the Navy after 28 years. I'm a captain now, and I work on the same court where I started off as a young officer back in 1992. I'm a judge now. I'm one of the old men. I'm one of the judges. And it's the Navy and Marine Corps Court of Criminal Appeals. And if you get convicted at a court-martial, that is the highest military court you can go to try to appeal your case. After that, it would go to an appellate court in Washington and then the Supreme Court. So,
and is the appellate court, the civil appellate court in Washington, is that discretionary for them? And it's of right with the military court?
That's exactly right. So the military court in Washington, where I sit, is the last chance someone gets who's convicted for a guaranteed opportunity to at least have an appeal heard. Right. And we sit in 3-judge panels, and I go to Washington now once a quarter to work up there with the court. So I've enjoyed that. But I also, before I ran for office, I was very involved with the Louisiana Boy State program and the American Legion, which...
Did I see Eagle Scout too?
Yeah, I was an Eagle Scout in high school, wow. And so all of those things have helped prepare me. Yeah. I tell people now I'm like an adult Boy State, because Boy State's a governmental program.
I went to Boy State.
Well, you know, it's a great program.
It was wonderful. I remember never getting any sleep.
You did not, and that hasn't changed. But I really have enjoyed working with those different programs. I've also been involved with the LSU Cadets of the Old War School, which is LSU alumni who have served in the military, which is a great group. And now I'm a commissioner for the USS Kidd downtown, which is a museum and a ship downtown.
Yeah, I'm so glad we have that now.
It's wonderful. One of my mentors, Henson Moore, when he's a congressman, brought the ship to us, and he is now chairman of the commission. And in fact, he has a meeting tonight, but I told him I was coming to do an interview with you, so he was okay with that.
Fantastic. Well, all right, let's shift gears a little bit. That's all wear the hat of a state representative. So tell folks, you've indicated you wanted to always be involved in public service and, quote, as a politician, I guess. But what were the issues that you came to the body for the first time that you were really focused on? And then we'll compare them to what are the issues today.
Sure. Well, the big issue, of course, every year is passing a budget. I
didn't
realize,
right?
And there's never enough money to go around. So for me, I had a special interest in helping people with disabilities. I have a sister who has disabilities, and I have a son who's on the spectrum for autism. And so I really wanted to make a difference for those communities, not only for my family, but I know the parents who are dealing with educational issues, healthcare issues for their children. And so my very first year in office, I reached out to some folks and I said, give me some ideas. Don't just ask for more money, because everyone comes to want money. And I met with a group from Autism Speaks, a lady by the name of Shelley Hendricks, who was their government relations person, came to me and said, why don't we have health insurance cover children with autism? I said, well, sure, who would be against that? Well, I was very naive because I didn't realize that a lot of people don't
Taking
like
money
mandates.
from somebody, huh?
Well, what we were doing is we were mandating, if you're going to write health insurance in Louisiana, and a child has autism, you have to cover the treatment.
Interesting.
And insurance companies were not covering a lot of treatment, especially ABA therapy, saying they didn't think it was justifiable. Well, it's very expensive, and without the insurance, parents couldn't get it.
Right.
So we educated, and I had a lot of moms and dads, but especially those moms. They're warriors, the moms
Yes,
of
for
kids
their
with
children.
disabilities. And they came down to the Capitol, and in my first session, we passed a bill, and it was passed unanimously. Governor Jindal signed it.
Wow,
and so
what a personal triumph. for
very
you.
exciting, very
And for
exciting.
everybody who has lived through that scenario.
It was very exciting, and we were like the 15th state in the country to pass it, which is always nice to be near the beginning instead of at the end. So I was very pleased, and I still today, Locke, run into people who say, hey, my child was able to get that therapy at an early age because we could afford it, because of the insurance, and it made a big difference. And that's what motivates me to continue on in
Truly public service, not to ingratiate yourself with people, or
yeah, it's
certainly not to get a bunch of money.
It's rewarding. So I've made a point every year in my 12 years in the House to introduce at least one bill that will help people with special needs. And so that's been sort of my passion. But I've also worked in other areas. I mean, higher education in LSU.
It's always a big issue.
Very
Every
big
year.
issue. It's right on the edge of my district. I have lots of people that are impacted. I'm totally for the flagship designation. You know, we can't have all of our universities be everything for all people. We need a premier
What do
university.
you think about the quantity of universities that we have? Are they all truly needed?
I don't think
State
so.
universities?
I mean, that's a problem. We have too many.
It's
and
limited resources, and you're spreading it thin, so nobody can necessarily achieve greatness.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. And that's my frustration, because everyone wants to be treated the same. Well, we need, if you want to have a truly great university, or not great university, but something that's special in your top university, you have to put your resources behind
Right.
it. But I've learned universities are not going to be going away, because they're economic drivers for the different
That makes
areas
sense.
of the state.
Yeah, it does. I didn't even think about that.
But we've been pushing, you know, and I've been working very hard to push LSU in the flagship agenda.
And I mean, that is its current status, right?
It is. And they're doing great things out there. And I've also been very supportive of the TOPS program. It's very important to the people in my area. It's meant to keep our best and brightest here. It might be to a point where
It's
you might
kind of
be-
struggling, isn't
Yeah,
it? We're kind of all of a sudden using it for everybody, right?
That's what I was going to say. That's sort of the struggle. It's probably, in my opinion, the requirements are probably too easy to get it.
Okay, so you would address it with not a means-based test, but achievement.
Merit-based. I think you could raise the GPA, for example. Look, if we had plenty of money to go around, that's great if you can pay for everyone's college, but we don't have those kind of resources.
Right.
So you have to make some requirements, and let's really make it for the best and brightest. But I think it's a great tool to try to keep our kids here.
Now, I've seen a focus also, obviously based on your history, on veterans.
Yes, I'm very, of course, being in the Navy, I'm very plugged into those issues. In this past session, I passed what was called the Veterans First Business Initiative. And it was actually a joint effort between myself and Governor Edwards to create a veteran database at the Department of Economic Development for
Interesting.
veteran-owned businesses. So you as a patron, if you're like, hey, I want to shop with a veteran business, you can go to this database.
You got a list.
So it helps them economically, but something else we didn't think about on the front end, but we found as we went through the process, it also benefits returning veterans who are getting off active duty
And
who are
need
looking for a job.
Jobs.
Because think about it.
Veterans going to hire a veteran.
Absolutely. And when they get out, many of them, when they get out of service, they don't have much money or resources. And a lot of them have some disabilities.
Yeah,
in
they've
fact.
been traumatized. I know from my personal experience with friends and family. So what a great idea.
They have. So it's been good. And then every year since I first got elected, I've been pushing for a constitutional convention for the state.
To do what?
To have a new constitution, because we have too many dedicated funds And it's
No,
become,
you guys have no discretion because there's no money left for y'all to have discretion over,
That's
right?
exactly right.
It's all dedicated.
That's exactly right, Locke. And when I ran for office back in 2007, I had heard for years how you had to either cut higher education or health care when there was a deficit or raise taxes. And it seemed to me there should be other options.
All right, we'll continue this on the next segment. This is Locke Meredith with Legal Lines. My guest, Franklin Foyle, currently state representative, running to be a state senator. We'll be right back. Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan and Associates has served our community by airing Legal Lines, a community educational program for 18 years weekly to Baton Rouge and the surrounding areas. Watch Legal Lines at LockeMeredith.com or Cox Channel 1004.
Hello, my name is Sean Fagan. And you know, one of the most important considerations in hiring an attorney is considering trust. I believe at our firm, our results speak for themselves. Most of the people we represent come from past clients who have referred friends, family members, other people they love to us to represent them in the same way we represented the persons who referred them. It's the greatest compliment any law firm could get. And I believe that if you come to our firm, we'll earn your trust.
Legal Lines has interviewed Louisiana Supreme Court justices, appellate trial court judges, federal, state, and local government leaders, including U.S. senators and Congress members. Watch at Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan and Associates website, LockeMeredith.com or Cox Channel 1004. Hello, welcome back to Legal Lines. I have as my guest for the very first time Franklin Foyle. He is currently a state representative for District 70. He's running to be a state senator, replacing Dan Claytor because he's termed out. District 16. Let's dive back in. Explain to the folks kind of the role of being a representative in the House, in the legislature, versus the role of a senator and kind of the big picture. You got your executive or the governor up here, you got your two legislative bodies. Explain to them the process.
In the House and the Senate, it's somewhat similar to the process, but you have to go through both bodies. The House, there are 105 members, so it's a much bigger body. The Senate, there are only 39. But when you introduce a bill, it's assigned to a committee based on the subject matter of your bill. So if it's about hunting, it would go to the Natural Resources Committee. And then you'll go to the committee, you'll have a hearing on the bill, and that's the one chance the public has to weigh in whether they like the bill or not. They can testify one way or the other.
And that's where you guys get educated, right? The guys who are on that committee, they're like, y'all tell us why you want it, why you don't want it. Experts, I presume, and all that. You explain.
No, you're exactly right. You get experts that come to testify. You can bring in state officials to talk about how it's going to affect their department. And that's where you really learn the meats and potatoes about the bill in the committee level. And so the committee can vote one way or the other by, if they vote for a majority vote, it will go to the House floor.
And how many on each committee?
About 15 people on each committee, and so that's really important, and you get your subject matter expertise by being on a committee. You have to pick. You're not going to be an expert in everything.
Right, and you got to chop up the massive world we live in and issues.
Exactly, and so if the bill gets out of the committee, it will go to the House floor, and then it takes a majority, which is 53, to pass the bill out. But when it's on the House floor, the public doesn't get to come talk about the bill on the floor, get the experts.
You could be invited to speak?
No.
That's a question, I don't know.
You can't, not really.
Like I see occasionally somebody on TV talking about it, and I don't see it often.
No, once it gets to the House, there's some rare circumstances dealing with the budget where some state officials can come and talk about, some economists. But generally when you have a bill, your only chance to speak about it at that point is to ask a member to come outside and you can have a personal conversation. And that's what the lobbyists do.
Okay, and so that in the committee, if you vote for it and you want it to pass, it's kind of one of your jobs, I guess, as a member of the committee who wants it to pass, to educate the rest of the body, huh?
Absolutely.
How do you do that?
Well, I'll tell you, whenever I have a bill, first I work the committee. I talk to everyone on the committee and answer any questions and ask them,
Well, what a great collaborative
if I can help them, yeah. And part of it, I think, is being an attorney. It's sort of like going to court and trying to win a case. You have your experts and your witnesses, right? So when I get to the House floor, I do the same thing. I start working members, and I will talk to everyone who I need their vote and explain the issues. And so if you get the bill out of the House, it takes 53 votes, then it will go to the Senate, and you go all through the same process again. So you have a new committee, you have to work on the Senate side.
Majority vote there.
Majority vote in the Senate committee. Then you got to work the senators, and as a House member, I can't go handle my bill on the
It's
Senate
all
floor
over there. So you got to get somebody associated with you in the Senate
to help me.
to help you.
And
Got
Senator
it.
Claytor and I have worked very well together, and so Dan.
In fact, he has endorsed you.
He has.
Said you were one of the hardest working, most honest folks he's had to deal with.
He's been great to work with, and so he's helped me tremendously, and so he'll do a lot of my
Dan's
bills
done a
in the
great
Senate.
job as
He really
state
has.
senator.
And so if you're fortunate enough then to get the bill out of the Senate, then it goes to the governor for consideration. The governor can either sign the bill or veto it. If the governor signs it, it goes into law. But it's quite a process. Even bills
Boy,
that
is it.
seem simple, you're always curious or surprised by some of the trouble you may run into along the way.
And remarkably, you have actually you've gone through that whole process with ideas and bills that you supported, that you put forward as a bill that was your bill, and it's gone through this entire process and signed by a governor 73 times.
It has. I'm very proud of my record. When I look at all of my peers that I came in with in 2007, I have the third highest passage rate of bills.
Very impressive.
Through the process. And so that's what I'm telling folks. I'm proud to run on my record, not only of experience, but being effective. And I want to be able to go to the Senate and continue that same success.
That's my next question. So I presume you want to go do the same thing in the Senate. I guess it's perhaps a little easier because you don't have as many people you got to talk to.
It is. It's a smaller group, so it is easier on the Senate side. But I still have to get my bills through the House as well. So I would have to go back over there. But yes, I feel like I can get a lot done, and I really want to continue on a lot of the issues I've already brought.
That was my next question. What are the issues that you intend to press in the Senate?
Yeah,
if
like
elected?
Like for example, this past year I passed a K through 12 savings account, and what it allows, and it's based on the federal tax code changes, you can put money away in a tax-free savings account and use that for private school tuition. Well, it provides a federal tax break. I'd like to provide a state tax break too, just like a college savings plan.
And so if
That's
you
something
put
I'll
money
push.
in that educational account, does the person who did so deduct it from their taxable income?
They do.
And then they put that money in there. It can grow and not be taxed, and then be used to finance only the education.
It can be used to educate your children for K through 12. And then the beauty of the program is, let's say you don't need it because your kids go to public school, well then you can roll it into a college tax-free savings account and use it for college purposes.
Which they do have accounts.
They do.
That's been existing
Those
for
are
a while.
called the START accounts.
Right.
The bill I passed 2 years ago is the START K through 12 to expand it. And one of my frustrations this past session.
Great accomplishment.
Yeah, I'm real excited, but one of my frustrations is I wanted to get a state tax break too, and it failed in the Senate. So I want to go over to the Senate and get that taken care of.
Get a little more direct talk with them.
mean, look,
makes sense.
Families are trying to do the best they can for their children, and any kind of break we can give families to do that, I think, is important.
Now, the committees you're on right now are what?
Well, I'm vice chairman of the Appropriations Committee, which is
very powerful.
It's very important because we do the state budget. We appropriate the money. And so every year it's always a challenge because you want to make sure there's enough money for all concerned. You hear from all the different agencies and all the people that are affected by it. And I'm always been looking out very hard for higher education because LSU is very important to my district.
Right.
I have Pennington
to the city,
in my
to
district.
the state.
Yes, and so it's always a balance because you got to take the money from somewhere. And so some of the things we've tried on appropriations is to try to be more fiscally responsible, to make sure we get the priorities taken care of. But the last couple of years we passed bills where we didn't spend all the money. We held back a little bit. Now, unfortunately, as it went through the process, all the money was spent. But you have these shortfalls. We don't want shortfalls.
Well, explain to me how we currently have, for the first time in a decade, it sounds like, a $500 million surplus.
Yeah, it's a much better position than a shortfall, and we have to pass a balanced budget in Louisiana.
Right, thank God.
We do, which they don't in Washington.
Right.
And so the expert economists tell us how much money they project is going to come in, and then we can spend up to 100% of that, no more than 100%. And so what happened was when they had the federal tax changes, that the Trump tax change actually caused our taxpayers here who itemize to pay more taxes. And so that's why we have a windfall, because you can deduct your federal taxes. So if you're paying less than federal taxes, you get less of a deduction. So we probably, right now the tax burden is probably higher than it needs to be because you're getting a surplus of $500 million.
So you would support a reduction in
roll
taxes?
back, yeah, absolutely. And we had a bill to roll back the sales tax quicker than it will be. It did not pass, but that's something we need to look at. But
So quickly, what other issues would you push? We probably have 30 seconds.
Yeah, well, I want to continue to push special needs. I've been working to get a job training program at VRCC for children with special needs, and we just got that off the ground where you have classroom training and they have employers that hire these kids for internships. I want to make that a robust program.
And you're not guaranteed to be on those particular committees, but that's your focus.
With my experience, I think I could get on the Senate Finance Committee.
Franklin, thank you very much.
My
It's been
pleasure.
a pleasure. Thank you. This is Locke Meredith, Legal Lines. Franklin Foyle, he's running for State Senate District 16, election 1012, early voting 9/28 to October 5. Thank you for being with us.